Warning. Critique Revolve contains adult language and discussions. If you're easily offended, do not continue to listen. Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Critique Revolve on Rain Man Digital. I am Michael Flores, your host for today's review, and I'm here today with Andrew Spindler from, you want to introduce yourself? You're Andrew Spindler, and where are you from, Andrew?
I'm from here in Mesa. Andrew Spindler here from the Cards and Shit podcast.
All right.
As far as I know, the only board gaming podcast here in the Valley.
Really? And you're coming here to guest host with me on Critique Revolve.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, all right. And then now the film that we are reviewing today is the latest Michael Mann flick titled Blackhat, which if you know anything about hacking or, you know, computer techie stuff, I guess right off the bat you kind of figure out that this movie has to do with, I guess, cyber terrorism to a degree, correct?
Yes.
Which is kind of convenient, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Almost uncomfortably so.
Yeah. Now, Blackhat may refer to give you a little bit of background on the title, so those are not quite sure what Blackhat means. I know you and I had a debate on how many movies there are with the title Blackhat.
Six of them since the turn of the century.
Okay, so it's not very unique. However, it does, I guess, make sense for this movie. They actually said it a couple times. You had the little ping, like,
yep.
Oh, he's a black hat, and you know, ping. You hear the little bell. So, Blackhat may refer to a black hat hacker, someone violating computer or internet security maliciously or for illegal personal gain.
Do you know what a white hat hacker does?
He beats the black hat.
No, they basically work for companies and they find security loopholes and stuff like that. Google's, of course, a big employer of white hat hackers. They're good guys, basically.
Oh, okay.
But real world.
Why does the white gotta be good and the black gotta be bad? That's just a fucked up world. All right. So going into this, I was a bit excited. I had to kind of bring down my excitement level a bit because I am a huge Michael Mann fan. And those of you who don't remember Michael Mann or know who he is, I mean, come on. Heat, one of the greatest crime sagas probably made on film, to be portrayed on film. Heat, Public Enemies,
Ali.
The Insider, Ali. What else? Miami Vice. I guess a lot of people didn't like that one. However, I did. But there's a lot of, he's done a lot of, if you look, he has a track record. He does crime sagas.
He also did my mom's favorite movie, The Last of the Mohicans.
Oh, come on. Oh, that is a good movie. I didn't even, you know what?
She was watching that yesterday, actually.
He definitely is arguably a good director. He knows what he's doing. He's been in the game for a very long time. And if you haven't seen one of his movies, then you should definitely treat yourself to starting from the beginning. Definitely check out Last of the Mohicans, then Heat, Collateral, which is another one he did, which I thought was great. That was a breakthrough performance for Tom Cruise, where he actually plays a bad guy for the first time. And this is Collateral was in 2004, and that's when, you know, like, this is before the anti-hero got popular.
Yeah.
Where it was almost unheard of to put a leading man in a role where he is a scumbag, where he's a bad guy killer. So when Tom Cruise came on the scene in 2004 for this Michael Mann movie about a taxi driver and an assassin, it sounds like a bad story for a sitcom. You know, a taxi driver and an assassin. But what Tom Cruise did for the anti-hero, or he paved the way for allowing actors, A-list celebrities, to play bad guys. Before that, it didn't really happen very much. Let's jump into the movie. Now, the synopsis of this film is set within the world of global cybercrime. Legendary's Blackhat follows a furloughed convict and his American and Chinese partners as they hunt a high-level cybercrime network from Chicago to Los Angeles and to Hong Kong. So this is a multicultural film. Lots of different.
Very.
I mean, this movie has the tendency. We were actually talking about this before we started recording. Pretty high dollars when it comes to the worldwide, the international market.
Oh yes,
because it has a very large Chinese or Chinese ethnicity, I guess, were a lot of the actors. I'd say 80% of the cast
of the main 5. Yeah, 2 of them.
Yeah. So I mean, you had Chris Hemsworth,
of course, for the American
is the
market,
star,
of course.
Yes, he's going to be the box office draw in the U.S. And after Public Enemies, that didn't hit up very well at the box office, I think Michael Mann, his last movie was 2009, which is Public Enemy. So Michael Mann, I think, I think the studios gave him the ultimatum. Look, dude, we love your shit. You do great crime sagas. The last film didn't do that great. Let's put yourself a leading man like Chris Hemsworth in here, and then we're going to give you the budget and we're going to greenlight your project. I'm pretty sure that's why they did it. Why they put Chris Hemsworth in this film.
I agree.
At first, I was a little taken back by it because he played a hacker. Which I don't. Yeah, I mean, I almost chuckled at first when they're like, "Oh, Chris Hemsworth, the greatest hacker of all time."
You sent me a link to a trailer for this movie last week or whatever, and I watched it, and I'm like, "How in the world is Hemsworth going to play a convincing hacker?"
Yeah, and you know what? He did good for the role, for the lines that were written for him. I think he did a service to them. I don't think he was terrible. But it's so hard for me to take him seriously. I mean, I see him as Thor.
Everybody
and
does.
when he doesn't have long hair, he looks like he's borderline Down syndrome. Like he has that Down's face, right? Am I right though? He does a little bit. So, yeah. Oh. So let's just jump into this movie. Let's start. And again, if you're new to listening to Critique Revolve, we like to talk about more the technical side of things. So we're going to jump into first to the writing. Now, when you break down the script, I'm going to talk to the Michael Mann fans out there and the people who have never seen a Michael Mann film before. Now, this is definitely the mood, the vibe, the motif, everything surrounding this movie when it comes to the writing, the direction, cinematography. This is molded to I think an older audience, meaning this is a film for adults, grown people, grown men are gonna like this movie. People who want to sit down, pop in a DVD or Blu-ray later on, and go see a movie and see like something that's not with pop music and the score. You're not seeing your everyday blockbuster summer film. This isn't a Michael Bay movie. This is something that kind of mature. Would you agree with that? It's kind of like the old school. I'm gonna give you a thriller. Sit back and watch this film.
I would agree to an extent.
What extent? What extent? How far? How far an extent is this?
It didn't feel thriller-ish. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it's a tech thriller and it's modern cybercrime, whatever.
I felt like it was more suspenseful when the action started.
It didn't for me. I'm just gonna jump right into it. I guess it didn't really grab me.
Right. The writing.
Yeah. Because for me it felt like the movie was trying to be smart.
Right.
But it wasn't quite getting to that extent because it's trying to throw in all like the big reference that I found kind of crazy was they mentioned the Onion Network and the Tor whole underground anonymous sort of a thing.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, which I was surprised that they had mentioned, but they didn't mention anything else other than anonymity.
Right. And you know what? That's
fine for the crowd that it's going for.
Right. And I think I do agree with that concept. I look at it less, I guess. I don't feel slighted as much as maybe you do, saying that they're trying to be smart. I to the degree I think they're trying to give you, when you're trying to sell tickets, sometimes you have to dumb down a movie a bit. And I think they tried that. I think they did a pretty good job taking a technical story and simplifying it so that the regular audiences can digest it. Because imagine if they up the ante just a bit on some of the tech stuff, that you would be lost. The normal person would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? So I think them having to dumb down the story a bit to make it digestible to audiences.
And that's fine.
It's kind of like you remember the Tom Clancy stories, the Clear and Present Danger, Patriot Games. I mean, that was the problem with Tom Clancy movies and the adaptation of them a lot. A lot of the times, people always complain, well, why didn't they adapt this book? This book was much better. And the answer was they always adapted the less technical books. Some of Tom Clancy's books were so technically advanced in the way they explain things. you would never be able to translate that over believably to an audience to say, yeah, I get this. So if you look at it, you can look at it from that standpoint. They kind of had to make this film a little bit more digestible. Now, that being said, let's talk about some of the issues with the script. I would like to start with the fact that I always look at everything in the 10-minute thing. Everybody knows me for that 10-minute thing, which is called the opening 10 minutes is called the inciting incident. And there needs to be something inciting there. You know, what's going to grab you and hook you in that 10 minutes. And I think they introduced the world to something that I think we quite haven't seen in an American film. They cleverly introduced you to what a virus may look like when it's infecting a computer, when it's breaking through firewalls and infecting an actual computer system. I thought that was pretty clever how they started it out that way.
The visual sequence for that was all CG, of course.
Yeah.
Super.
No, it was real.
shots.
They went inside those microchips.
And microscopic cameras, and they were going. No, but that scene was really, really good. It took a secondary look, not a secondary, a separate look on the inner workings of a CPU and all that fun stuff.
Right.
But then they do it again.
Yeah.
And then you.
I think they got a little too happy with the work. They're like, oh, dude, this is awesome. We got to throw it in again.
The whole point that they showed that scene was to show what was happening when a light turns on the CPU.
Right. And how it basically acts as an ignition once the virus has been implanted.
Exactly. But then they show that whole sequence again, back to the light, and you can just cut it out and just, hey, light's back on. Cool.
Yeah. So they did overuse it a bit, but it was a nice introduction.
It was a beautiful
It was
sequence.
dangerous. It was a dangerous move, I think, when you're putting something like that, because there's almost no dialogue for almost 10 minutes. Nothing.
There was not a lot of dialogue for a lot of this movie.
Yeah. Well, that's Michael Mann. He allows you, his direction is very slow, and he lets you marinate in some of the scenes a lot. Yeah. A lot of his shots, which we'll get into that a little bit more in the cinematography, but a lot of his shots are very intrusive, very extreme CUs, shaky cameras right on your nose and your eyeballs. He likes to be very intrusive. He wants to make you feel like you're in the movie. So the Act 1, I just got to say from a writing standpoint, it almost lost me.
It lost me.
And I was a little disappointed because, like, man, I was looking forward to seeing this Michael Mann movie, and the first act scared me. Once the first act got going, and you jump into the second act break, I was hooked. I was like, okay, this is getting better. I see where they're going.
Where do you think the second act started?
When the Chinaman, so racist. When the Chinese, with the Chinese investigator of the film, who was kind of, I guess, the main star for the first act, basically made a deal to get Chris Hemsworth out of jail. That was the point where we knew what the story was going to be about. Okay. That's always the ending of the first act. When we know, usually it's around 25 to 30 minutes into the film, we're like, okay, that's what we kind of know what the movie's going to be about. That was the act break. He gets out of jail. He hugs his friend. At that point, when he hugged his friend at the end of the first act is when I started liking the movie.
That is exactly where I started on board.
That's when you started writing notes, too.
That's exactly where I started writing notes, because
there was nothing to write in the first act.
There wasn't anything. It was all
the first act.
It was all jargon. It was all, this is happening, this is why it's happening, we need to figure out why and who and what and where, blah, 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 the whole fun thing. And then Hemsworth comes out of jail, and I had his name. Dewey's character. Chen Dewey was the character's name.
Yeah.
And Nicholas Hathaway, Chris Evans, hug, and we're like, oh, there's a bromance, and we're going to see this bromance, and it's going to be brolific and fun. And then Act 2, and then no development on that front.
Yeah, I agree with that. There was, and again, I'm going to play the Michael Mann fan here for a moment, but that's something I agree with you about the relationship thing, because that's something that Michael Mann always does in his movies. He always plays the bromances very well. Even if you take a movie like Heat, okay, you have the Al Pacino and Robert De Niro standoff obsession, where they're tracking each other, cat and mouse, where it's the verses where they had this respect for each other. You know, they even meet for that coffee and talk to each other,
right?
And they had that civilized moment. And you see that in a lot of Michael Mann's movies. He has the verses and the bromances. The relationships are very tight. Look at something like Miami Vice. Very tight relationships within the cops. You look at something like Collateral. Very tight relationship between taxi driver and assassin that they built in 2 hours. They had a relationship of sorts. This movie, they tried to do that with the Chinese counterpart, and I felt it when they hugged. I was like, I like this. And then they never went nowhere with it. They introduced this Chinese guy's sister for no apparent reason,
absolutely,
other than for Chris Hemsworth to have sex with.
I wrote down, I'm like, what? Like, I circled it and everything. I'm like, what did I miss? Why is this girl introduced?
Yeah, they didn't need her. They really
absolutely not.
I liked her.
No way.
I thought she was cute. I thought
because she was depressed, like you were talking about on the drive home.
Yeah, let's not get into my depraved issues. But yeah, I think she did good with this. My problems isn't with the actress. It's with
her role. With
some of the roles, I'm like, you could have given her a strong role. Eliminate one of them. Eliminate the brother or eliminate the sister. Why put both of them in there? And then you have, you have a relationship that they could have really built on. And I think that was the biggest problem with the entire writing of this movie, even with the second and third act. I think there was missed opportunities.
They didn't develop characters much, if at all.
Yeah.
Viola Davis, who played Carol Bennett in the movie, she was the strongest part of the first half.
Yeah. Up until the third act.
Yeah. What?
Yeah. I mean, well, guys, just so you know, there will be spoilers here.
Yeah.
But the female who I guess in charge. What is she? FBI, right?
She was a DOJ. Department of Justice.
That's right. She was a DOJ officer, and she was, set to watch Hemsworth and keep an eye on him and make sure he stays out of trouble and whatnot while he's furloughed. And she was the best. She had such a small role, but her performance, every line she delivered was so like a dry sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always tell who the people are going to like in the audience because you hear people laugh. And everything she did, people chuckled. And I think the audience connected with her the only person I think the audience truly connected with, which is sad because I don't think she was meant to be that pivotal of a character where you really connect with, but up into her death scene. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Up into her death scene when she got blown away. I mean, the audience. I mean, your reaction was great.
I was like, what?
You were like, what the fuck? Like, you were so loud. It was funny. And then everybody in the audience was like, you can tell they were like, oh shit. Like they were bothered by that she just got blown away.
That scene just rubbed me raw. Because it's a gunfight, and they get out of the car, and they stand in front of the car instead of using the car's cover.
It's the hero gunshots, dude. That's the hero fighting. You got to remember, there's certain things that you do in a movie because it's a movie.
I understand.
In real life, would they jump out of the car like they're superheroes made of armor and just start shooting? No. They would probably duck behind the bumper and cry and call their families.
Yeah. Hey, at least we'd see some character development in that front.
Yeah.
You get to know about who their families is and how they came.
Yeah. So, the writing itself, I don't think the writing was lazy. I just felt like there was some missed opportunities with development because there was pieces.
I'm with you 1,000%.
And you know what? For all we know, the movie was clocking in at 2 hours and 15 minutes. They might have cut some scenes. We don't know that because it felt like there was a whole relationship between Chris Hemsworth's character, what's his name? Nicholas, and what's the guy's name in the movie?
The character's name is Chen Dewey. The actor's name is Leehom Wang.
Oh, Chen. Yeah. Like the relationship between, it felt like there was a whole entire scene between Chris and Chen that we just never saw.
Yeah, and the most that we got out of that scene was when Chris Hemsworth confronts him in the helicopter about sleeping with his sister,
which I liked,
which was good. But that was the only.
Yeah. I think they could have given, you know what, they could have knocked, because they had a lot of long shots that kind of just sat there, which I usually like for these types of movies. But if they trimmed 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there, 2 minutes here, 3 minutes over here, they could have given Chen and Chris a scene at a coffee shop, a scene in the room talking. Give them a 5 to 10 minute scene to kind of maybe build a little bit more of a relationship between them. It doesn't require a lot. It could have been a 5-minute conversation that could have easily fixed the issue between them, because they were trying to pawn this off as this brother bromance. They love each other, loyalty, and then there was no payoff for it. And I think, honestly, man, and that's the sucky thing, looking at it from a writing standpoint, and you write as well. I mean, these are little fixes. You could have easily fixed that relationship with a 5-minute scene.
What kind of nicks me a little bit is we have the seeds for the bromance. His character dies, and then
they planted the seeds and never watered it.
Exactly. So the character dies, and then for the whole last act is all a vengeance mission to get revenge for killing his best friend. But we don't it just felt out of place. I understand
the revenge didn't mean as much because we didn't understand the relationship enough. And that's where the choices didn't make sense. It would have made more sense because they decided to make this woman, this girl, the sister of Chin. What's her name? Lynn. Yeah, Lynn. They tried to make Lynn, they built this relationship between Chin's sister and Chris. They could have killed her. That would have been much better. It would have made more sense. I'm like, it would have made a lot more sense. And this is one last problem I had with the relationship issues. I guess this isn't necessarily writing, but you don't need to have. I knew they were about to have sex because they had to have that moment where she all of a sudden connected with this guy that she never knew, and they sat down and had dinner, and they're talking, and she tries to give him some wise little like words of wisdom.
Chinese proverb.
Well, yeah, wise words of wisdom, and then all of a sudden they have sex in the next scene. I don't think you don't need to have.
They run from the bad guys in the awesome, brutal, up close fist fight, realistic violence, like you were talking for a fan of, and then they do it.
This is what I wrote. I'm like, the sex scene, I think, was forced because you don't need this. It would have been better if they didn't really build the relationship up, but they had sex.
Yeah.
To me, you don't need to have, in real life, you don't have reasons. There isn't reasons to have sex.
Nope.
If there's a female, there's a male, or two males and two females, and you're attracted to each other, it doesn't matter if you never spoke to each other, but you guys were in the same room together and you have some downtime. Guess what's going to happen? You're probably going to have sex. And it kind of would have worked. He's been in prison. She's obviously attracted to him. I would have been okay with them not having that conversation beforehand. It would have been better if they just were doing what they were doing, and all of a sudden she just looks at him and comes into the room, drops her blouse, and they have sex. That would have made more sense. Meaningless sex makes more sense than trying to force a relationship and then they have sex. Does that make sense?
It does. I would have preferred them to not have sex in the first place.
I agree.
You don't have to have sex to have a meaningful relationship with a woman.
I agree with that, but if they were going to do it, they wanted to give the people those titillating, sex scenes, then why justify it? It's like they're justifying why they're having sex for the morale police out there. I'm like, listen, you're watching a rated R movie with a bunch of gory violence. Guess what? You don't need morale police. Just let them fuck. We don't need some forced, meaningful discussion beforehand.
Yeah, I agree.
And then the relationship after that, everything after that would have made more sense because when people have sex, they do connect a little bit better. And then it would have made more sense without having to force this weird relationship. And then kill her off. Killing her would have made more sense than killing the brother.
The brother
only because of the choices that they made in writing, if that makes sense.
No, it does. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Now, the second act, like I said, fixed most of the movie. And the third act, the second and third act I didn't have issues, despite what we just talked about. Those are separate matters. The relationship issues, I think, is what I had the most problem with the writing. Would you agree?
Yes. Yes, I would.
Yeah. All right. Now let's move on to direction and cinematography. Now, Michael Mann is one of those directors. If you know what you're looking for, you look at it and you're like, you know what? That's a Michael Mann movie. Kind of like a Tarantino film or a Rodriguez film or Kevin Smith film. He's one of those directors. You have a style, and every movie you can always expect will have his style, his signature moments. Mm-hmm. Cinematography. Let's talk about cinematography for a moment. Now, Michael Mann was one of the first film directors to jump on board digital filmmaking, digital movie making, I should say, before it was deemed, air quotes here, acceptable for theatrical releases. If you look back at Collateral, which is 2004, digital, and I remember people going to theater and not understanding why it looked different back in 2004, which was 10 years ago now almost? Mm-hmm. Yeah, 11 years ago?
Yeah.
11 years ago. That's a long time ago when you think about it. Digital hasn't been around as an acceptable medium for that long. So when you look at that, when you look at 2004 was a long time ago, and you have a director like Michael Mann taking this medium, he's, in my opinion, him and people like, of course, Rodriguez, but specifically Michael Mann, is someone who really grabbed onto the medium and made it professional and acceptable for filmmakers to start using this digital medium. You look at scenes from Collateral, you look at scenes from Miami Vice, he actually mixed a lot, which I think he did that as well in this movie. He loves mixing the medium. He mixes film stock, if you guys don't know what that is, film stock, and he actually mixes digital as well for his scenes. And he actually in interviews has said that he will use whatever the story or the scene dictates. Not because it's cheaper, not because I like film better than digital, or because digital looks better than film, or vice versa. I'm going to pick it solely for aesthetic reasons, and if it fits the vibe that I want to give this specific scene. And I love that from a storytelling aspect, when a director can use, when he uses not just writing to tell a story, but he uses all the available elements to make your story, your art, into a cohesive story. And when they take those elements and use all your tools to tell your story, and realizing that not just words on a page will tell the story you want, but also the aesthetic choices that you make, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I love that. That's one of the greatest things. Michael Mann, to me, is a true artist in that sense.
There was a scene where Hemsworth was at an airport, and it was kind of doing a little bit of like a reaction shot sort of a thing, where it did switch between digital and film.
You could tell.
But you could tell, like,
you could tell, probably. Oh,
hardcore.
Really?
It looked
what
like...
scene was it?
It was when Hemsworth was going on the airplane for the first time.
Okay.
When they were flying overseas. It just switched from digital to what looked like a GoPro with a wide-angle lens, and it was kind of jarring.
Yeah. I don't there were a few choices,
and then it switched right back.
There was a few there's a few scenes in there, going with what you said, that were a bit, I questioned it. If I was an average moviegoer, I wouldn't. I'd be like, whatever. Yeah. But because we're doing this review here, I found myself questioning it a little bit, just because I didn't quite understand why they went with that specific shot. But there were other shots that as well that I thought, like, where they used, I don't know necessarily if they used a GoPro or not, but they use smaller cameras. You can tell, like the fight scene, the first fight scene with Chris Hemsworth, where I think the camera, right? I think the camera was strapped to the restaurant table at one point. I mean, one thing that I loved about Chris Hemsworth's character is he's a hacker, right? So you can't have this guy be a hacker and a badass with a gun. But they made a smart decision with
made him a
prison guy. So because he was in prison, obviously in prison you're going to have to learn to fight. So everything he did was very ghetto. It was prison fighting. And even that scene was like, he picked up that table like it was the food tray that you used to beat the other inmates to show that you're the toughest guy around. I'm Castor Troy, and he took that table and just bashed the guy's head with it. And I loved how they used the cameras and use them to initiate the movements. I mean, at one point, I think they had a camera attached to the table, and you actually saw it hit the guy's head. So the cinematography, and this is one of those perfect movies where the cinematography and the direction worked, the synergy between the two worked very, very well.
I agree.
Like Michael Mann was, and it sucks because I think Michael Mann he was so tapped into the cinematography and the directing that I thought it was almost perfect, that I think I wish I could like take Michael Mann or talk to him in his head and be like, man, can you back off just a little bit from this and put a little bit more focus also in your writing as well? Because it wasn't his writing. He didn't write the script. Someone else did, but it would have been nice.
The person who wrote the script actually wrote Click, the Adam Sandler movie back in the day.
Oh, shut the...
Dead serious, dude.
That's a bad choice. Come on.
Morgan Davis Foehl.
Really?
Yeah.
What else is on his roster?
I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Norris. Chuck and Larry, rather. He wrote the TV show The Loop.
So basically, this is his first serious movie.
No. Yeah. But he is signed on to do the Mass Effect screenplay for the video game. That might be kind of good.
Yeah. Well, you might be scared now, guys.
Yeah.
You know what? But this is a good example where you don't let people like this write. Where's his track record? Michael, there had to be an issue. I would love to find out. I would love to be a fly on the wall and find out how they came to that decision. Like, Michael Mann's a control freak. Why would he allow someone like that with that track record to write the script for his latest film?
Oh, actually, I lied. He was known for editing Click, and this is actually his first writing credit.
Yeah. Good job. And you know what? And would you agree that that might be probably the stain on the entire package?
Yes, it shows almost sorely how much this guy.
See how good we are. See how good we are. We knew immediately something was off.
Yep.
And that's what it is. That's what it is. And Michael Mann is a good writer. He knows. I wonder what happened. I wonder what maybe Universal was like. Listen, Michael, your last movie was a bomb, and we're going to go ahead and if you want that $70 million, you need to make this movie. Or however, I don't even know what the budget was. Do you have the budget in front of you by chance?
I do not, but I can look it up.
That could be
Legendary was also involved in this one, right?
Universal Legendary, co-production. And that could be, that might have been an ultimatum, just much like, having that lead actor, as we were saying, with Chris Hemsworth as the lead to get the budget that you want. Mm-hmm. Maybe that was also, maybe this writer had some deal with Universal and they decide this movie would be the one they're going to give them.
The production budget is unavailable.
Really?
Through Box Office Mojo, at least. Yeah.
This movie's got to be at least 50, 60 million.
It's definitely going to be
with the locations and the
locations
and
were
the
beautiful.
Fight scenes, the real practical effects, the explosions that were real, all that stuff. So let's jump into that now. Let's jump into sound. The way we're going to discuss this, I think it's good to kind of group together sound and the action scenes. Go, you can start.
Yeah. So there are a few scenes where one of the characters is meeting with a Chinese governmental officials with trying to figure out who the hacker was that shut down the nuclear facility.
Uh-huh.
And there were some problems with the ADR that were fairly obvious to me.
Very close to the beginning.
Very close to the beginning. The first...
I'd say 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, yeah.
Where it was either the ADR, where it was the person was talking off screen. It didn't blend kind of well in post and whatnot.
And if you guys don't know what ADR is, it's basically automatic dialogue replacement. You could say that's what it's called. Basically where you sync up the audio and post. Those of you who don't realize that, a lot of the times the voice that you hear, the sounds of the actor talking, or even the background sounds, which is, Foley or sound design, that isn't done while they're filming. It's almost impossible sometimes to grab, good, clean sound from set, because you have generators, you have people working in the background, you have outside noises if you're not shooting in a studio, which I don't think those were studio shots. I think a lot of that was on location.
I think that was all location.
So a lot of times you have to add these in post, specifically the dialogue. Go ahead, Andrew.
So there were a few problems with that early on and late into the movie as well, believe it or not. But another issue that we saw that you actually brought up was some of the characters, when they were speaking the foreign languages, it didn't seem to match up, where it was kind of like it was dubbed from a different language.
Yeah. It was dubbed, but it didn't need to be because it was foreign.
Right.
So it almost felt like this guy might have not known the language he was speaking. So
I don't think he did at all.
So they dubbed in another person speaking the language, and it didn't make any sense. And it took my brain about, 5 seconds, maybe 10 seconds, to realize that it wasn't. I thought it was dubbed. Right. And I'm like, no, it isn't dubbed because we have subtitles and he's speaking a foreign language, so why is it off? Then my brain, it really threw me out for a good, I think the entire scene, the whole 2-3 minutes, it kind of threw me out. And I started thinking maybe the film was a sync to the sound. Maybe it was a technical issue up in the room, up in the projection room. But but everything else was synced. Everyone else talking at that same time was...
All of it else looked fine.
Yeah, it was
And there
odd.
was one character in the movie where it happened with mainly, and it was the head general guy.
The boss of the Chinese police force. But then he comes in again though later on, and he spoke English, and it was fine. Yeah.
Anyway, one little thing with the Foley throughout this movie is, for hacker movies, you got to have the clickety clack on the typeboard and the keyboard
and the angry one.
Where it was just like bam, 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 go, hit enter, do it faster, do it harder, make it louder.
Wait, are you typing or having sex, or are you in a chat room? Are you having sex in a chat? Are you internet sex? What are you doing? Does it make you want to start typing though when you hear it? You're all, I could do just like, doesn't
at least the typing seemed like it was like actual typing and not just like
some television shows are lazy about their Foley that they do, and the typing doesn't match the arm movements. And believe me, I'm anal when it comes to sound, and I could see the arms moving. I'm like, hey, I know his hands aren't moving to that sound. I could tell. So no, they did a really good job with the since we're talking about sound, the ADR or the sound design was beautiful. Once again, I mean, Michael Mann knows how to make something sound legit. Now, outside of the issues that we had with some of the odd sounds, like some of it was right in your ear for some reason, like talking in the background was off-screen talking, and it felt very intrusive. And also, of course, the dub scene that we thought was dubbed was odd. But outside of that, I mean, just beautiful sound design. Michael Mann has always said that he wants when it comes to his action, the way I don't think there's anybody in Hollywood today that captures action scenes and violence like he does. It reminds me.
Michael Bay doesn't do it.
Not even Michael Bay. It reminds me of the old Hong Kong films. I don't know if you ever watched the old Hong Kong cinema cop films from the 80s and 90s.
I have not, no.
I guarantee you that's his inspiration. It's loud gunshots, loud real life sounds with reverb. Because a lot of movies we've come to accept that gun sounds sound very clear and clean. Whereas in Michael Mann's movies, they always have lots of reverb. They echo the shit out of your eardrums. It sounds like you're next to a gun being shot.
See, I sort of disagree kind of with the choice on that. Well, it does kind of...
I hate you for that one.
I know you do. It transports you to the visceralness of the scene. But
that's a perfect way of saying it.
Right. But when it screeches in your ear and it kind of like physically hurts your ear,
that might have been a theater issue.
That's where I can never tell because either
it was
theaters
very
are getting
loud.
louder and louder and louder every time I go see a movie. It seems like.
I guarantee you, if you watch this how Michael Mann wanted you to watch it, it probably wouldn't be as because there was points where my ears were hurting.
Yeah.
For how loud the gunshots were, and I think that might have just been a volume issue within the theater itself with the exhibition. What happened?
Knocked over
sorry.
Somebody, a pop figure.
All right. But the way they capture sound design, yes, again, the sound was a bit loud, and I think that I think, Andrew, that has to do more with the exhibition.
That's fine. I totally think that it would be, but it's just
because I don't think that's safe.
I
don't think I think they have to be regulated within sound issues for your ears. And I don't think they would allow people's ears to be hurt. Yeah. I think the theater, you're going to find these guys turning this down. This was a screening, so they probably didn't realize how the levels were. You're going to find them probably turning it down and on Friday night when it opens.
That's fine.
So again, the sound was pretty goddamn good, and it
felt really nice.
I mean, dude, when those people some of the characters got shot, you could feel the impact, right?
Good.
I knew you liked it. That's why I was surprised when you said you didn't really like the movie because you were doing oohs and ahs through the entire thing. So
I was doing the oohs and ahs
Andrew likes this. I think
the reason I was doing the oohs and ahs is because I'm not like a kind of like a gore sort of person. There wasn't a whole lot, but like the shots and like the hits, the table to the head.
A little too much
screwdriver into the brain.
Yeah.
I'm just like, like that's it's not my thing.
Yeah,
but I mean, it looked good.
Yeah, I mean the shootout scenes. And again, if you saw Heat, nothing will ever beat Heat. Heat was like a 20-minute. Remember that scene when they're coming out the bank, and they're shooting, and that standoff for like 20 minutes straight where they're shooting. Mm-hmm. Ever since then, I don't think Michael Mann can ever top an action scene like that, but he always comes close with every new film. You saw it in Collateral, you saw it in Miami Vice, and now even to some degree in Public Enemies, which is probably my least favorite film of his, but he brings it back with this movie again with those great captured action scenes that feel real. It actually feels like you're in it, and that combined with the direction and cinematography, dude, if this was I know he's not going to make a 3D movie, but imagine if this was 3D. Or imagine if this was an IMAX screen.
IMAX would make sense.
IMAX would be amazing, right?
IMAX anything is amazing.
It would be fantastic. You would feel if you had the real IMAX ones that we don't have in Arizona, even the ones that actually wrap around you,
and a D-box chair on top of that.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Nice.
That would be fantastic.
Still wouldn't fix the movie though.
No, well, the writing. They needed to fix the writing. I wonder. You know what? I wonder if Michael Mann has a director's cut ready to roll for DVD. I almost feel like he didn't get the cut out that he wanted. It just felt
I would hope so.
He doesn't do botchy relationships, and I felt the relationships were botchy in this. So I'm wondering if they had to cut things. I'm wondering just because the fact maybe this is me being a Michael Mann fanboy. I don't know, and I'm hoping, but I feel like the writing was so off compared to his usual stuff. Even movies like Miami Vice that fared badly at the box office and people didn't like it. It was a well written script with well built relationships.
Mm-hmm.
This I felt, as we said before, we're beating a dead horse here, but
sorry there, guys.
It's all
right. So let's go. I want to kick back to set design for a second.
Okay, yeah.
The set design, along with the directing, it kind of set up for bits of foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
There was a scene where there was a chase happening through kind of like a slum sort of an area, and the camera kind of zooms in on an empty chair in a newspaper.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, is this going to be sort of a little bit of, you know?
They set you up really well.
But see, I disagree because
Really?
they give you, because it never felt like we were a step behind the guy, like behind the big baddie, whatever. It just didn't felt like they weren't getting any traction for where they wanted to go. But for the foreshadowing, there were so many opportunities where just even a little bit of a sort of a something could have said, oh, hey, he's closer than we think he is. And we knew that they were both watching each other.
I get what you're saying with the foreshadowing. Okay.
Yeah. There was I
thought you were talking about more like some of the scenes where they set themselves up, which I thought I like that. Like, for example, the ending scene where the girl goes in and gets medical supplies.
Oh.
And they get
that was cool.
Like, stuff like that. And then you're like, why is she getting medical supplies? And then in the end, I guess they just took into effect thinking ahead that, hey, he might get shot. And then all of a sudden she's using those medical supplies that she took from the pharmacy, and she's using on him 30 minutes later.
That was a good
stuff like that. He did that quite a bit.
That was good. There was a scene where they need to go to Qatar. No, not Qatar. Jakarta.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get a visa.
Indonesia.
And it's like spider bit. Friend has no visa. Have to get out now. Mm-hmm. In the background of that scene, there was a billboard on the left with a big old eye and a billboard on the right with a big old watch. And I was like, oh, that's very blatant. You know, yeah, it means something because they're watching each other, and they're running out of time and sort of a thing.
Look at you.
I know, right? There's something here. But it didn't feel like it delivered on what it was teasing.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I can see that. I feel like I said, we said from the very beginning, there were some missed opportunities. And I think everything we're saying is like we're almost justifying for it. Like we did. I think you liked the movie more than you're leading on.
I might have.
I think you did because
this is definitely a second watch for me.
I was sitting next to a guy that was enjoying a movie. I'm sorry. I could tell you were laughing. You had a smile on your face. There were scenes where you actually enjoyed the movie. So I think from a technical side, I think we're more disappointed. Like I think as writers ourselves and film buffs, I think that we just saw the missed opportunities. Like the money was falling off the back of the wagon, you know?
It was. There were some buzzwords that were thrown in there quite a lot.
And like
they tried to link everything to 9/11. Everything.
Yeah. And I'm wondering what the reason, because it's so long ago, and I'm wondering why Michael Mann would choose now to kind of bring that back.
It's a common thread, I guess.
Yeah.
Where people
can relate.
Exactly. Everyone in the world, especially with the international market that it's trying to go after, they can kind of understand about, oh, hey, this is a big, huge thing that might happen again in this movie.
Yeah.
So there was NSA, all that fun stuff, buzzwords there. And I wonder if how early or late in production this was when the Sony hacks happened.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that was done, months before.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, it's very convenient, and it might even help the movie in some way.
Yeah, because they'd be like, average person would be like, oh, hey, there's this hack thing that happened. Oh, hey, here's a hacking movie. Let's go see what that's all about.
Yeah. So I guess in conclusion, I'd have to say I think you're going to enjoy. This is an enjoyable movie. You're not going to sit down and be like,
it was It was a popcorn movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I mean, this isn't an intellectual, thriller by any means, but it is an enjoyable film with some fantastic action scenes. And I think that scene at the end with Chris,
the last scene didn't make sense to me.
No, the Chris Hemsworth scene where he was getting ready for the final fight scene, and
where he thugs it up.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, how is he going to take these guys to task when he's not a badass? And what he did is he ended up ghettoing himself up, meaning he basically wrapped himself up in phone books, gave himself shanks and shivs, and that's what he fought these guys with. And I'm like, that's kind of cool.
But he did it in the middle of a parade. Like, these dudes have guns, and he takes a gun from one of the guys that he just stabbed.
A parade.
I got a parade, guys. There's balloons and statues and everything.
Oh man! But you didn't.
There's your short hair Hemsworth right there for you.
So stupid. You didn't think that scene was gorgeous, though? I mean, when
it was a beautiful scene, but he picks up a gun from the guy that he just killed, and he shoots into a crowd of people.
He's a bad guy. He's a criminal. Come on.
No. Hemsworth.
I know he's a criminal too. So it's a crime saga, dude. They don't care. But I thought that scene was so gorgeous. That ending
beautiful,
scene
yes.
where it was so beautiful, man. The whole him coming up behind the guy, the parade in the foreground.
Nobody's ever gotten this close before. Stab.
Right into the chest. So in conclusion, I would say if you like what you hear from us, yeah, you know what? I'd recommend to go see it. I would. I'm not saying not to see. I definitely go check it out. If Michael Mann fans, I think, would appreciate it.
If you have a big TV, wait for it to be rented. If you don't have a big TV, I would say wait for it to hit the dollar theater.
Yeah, don't download it on iTunes and watch it on your phone.
God, no.
You would not get the effect of this. So thank you, everybody, for listening
Who watches
to...
a movie on their phone?
Lots of
Are there
people
that
nowadays.
really do that?
Oh, yeah, I do it at the gym
okay.
when I'm doing cardio. But.
Well, that makes sense then. All right.
So thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening to the latest episode of Critique Revolve. You can find all of our reviews, past and present, on our website, rainmanwashere.com. And we'll be back next week. Thank you so much.
Toodaloo.
The Corova Milk Bar sold Milk Plus Velicet, or Synthemesk, or Drencrum, which is what we were drinking. This would sharpen you up and make you ready for a bit of the old ultra-violence.